Buzkashi, literally goat pulling in Persian, is a Central Asian sport in which horse-mounted players attempt to place a goat or calf carcass in a goal. Similar games are known as kokpar, kupkari, and ulak tartysh, in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, and as kökbörü and gökbörü in Turkey, where it is played mainly by communities originally from Central Asia. Buzkashi began among the nomadic Turkic peoples who came from farther north and east, spreading westward from China and Mongolia between the 10th and 15th centuries in a centuries-long series of migrations that ended only in the 1930s. From Scythian times until recent decades, Buzkashi has remained a legacy of that bygone era. During the rule of the Taliban regime, Buzkashi was banned in Afghanistan, as the Taliban considered the game immoral. After the Taliban regime was ousted, the game resumed being played. Today, games similar to Buzkashi are played by several Central Asian ethnic groups such as the Kyrgyz, Turkmens, Kazakhs, Uzbeks, Uyghurs, Hazaras, Tajiks, and Pashtuns. In the West, the game is also played by Afghan Turks, ethnic Kyrgyz, who migrated to Ulak Pamir village in the Van district of Turkey from the Pamir region. In western China, there is not only horseback Buzkashi, but also yak Buzkashi among Tajiks of Xinjiang. Buzkashi is the national sport in Persian in Afghanistan, where it is often played on Fridays and matches draw thousands of fans. Whitney Hazomi notes in his book Buzkashi, Game and Power in Afghanistan that leaders are men who can seize control by means foul and fair and then fight off their rivals. The Buzkashi rider does the same. Traditionally, games could last for several days, but in its more regulated tournament version, it has a limited match time. Kazakhstan's first National Kokpar Association was registered in 2000. The association has been holding annual Kokpar championships among adults since 2001 and youth Kokpar championships since 2005. All 14 regions of Kazakhstan have professional Kokpar teams. The regions with the biggest number of professional Kokpar teams are southern Kazakhstan with 32 professional teams, Jambil region with 27 teams, and Akmola region with 18 teams. Kazakhstan's national Kokpar team currently holds the title of Eurasian Kokpar champions. A photograph documents kökbörü players in Kyrgyzstan around 1870. However, Kyrgyzstan's kökbörü rules were first officially defined and regulated in 1949. Starting from 1958, kökbörü began being held in hippodromes. The size of a kökbörü field depends on the number of participants. The Buzkashi season in Tajikistan generally runs from November through April. High temperatures often prevent matches from taking place outside of this period, though isolated games might be found in some cooler mountain areas. In Tajikistan and among the Tajik people of Tashkhorgan in China's Xinjiang region, Buzkashi games are particularly popular in relation to weddings, as the games are sponsored by the father of the bride as part of the festivities. Buzkashi was brought to the US by a descendant from the Afghan royal family, the family of King Amanullah and King Zahir Shah. A mounted version of the game has also been played in the United States in the 1940s. Young men in Cleveland, Ohio played a game they called carcass. The men, 5 to a team, played on horseback with a sheepskin-covered ball. The greater Cleveland area had 6 or 7 teams. The game was divided into 3 checkers, somewhat like polo. The field was about the size of a football field and had goals at each end, large wooden frameworks standing on tripods, with holes about 2 feet square. The players carried the ball in their hands, holding it by the long-fleeced sheepskin. A team had to pass the ball 3 times before throwing it into the goal. If the ball fell to the ground, the player had to reach down from his horse to pick it up. One player recalls, others would try to unseat the rider as he leaned over. They would grab you by the shoulder to shove you off. There weren't many rules. Mounted team-based potato races, a popular pastime in early 20th century America, bore some resemblance to Buzkashi, although on a much smaller and tamer scale. Competition is typically fierce. Prior to the establishment of official rules by the Afghan Olympic Federation, the sport was mainly conducted based upon rules such as not whipping a fellow rider intentionally or deliberately knocking him off his horse. Riders usually wear heavy clothing and head protection to protect themselves against other players' whips and boots. For example, riders in the former Soviet Union often wear salvaged Soviet tank helmets for protection. The boots usually have high heels that lock into the saddle of the horse to help the rider lean on the side of the horse while trying to pick up the goat. Games can last for several days, and the winning team receives a prize, not necessarily money, as a reward for their win. Top players, such as Aziz Ahmad, are often sponsored by wealthy Afghans. A Buzkashi player is called a shapandaz. It is mainly believed in Afghanistan that a skillful shapandaz is usually in his 40s. This is based on the fact that the nature of the game requires its player to undergo severe physical practice and observation. Similarly, horses used in Buzkashi also undergo severe training and due attention. A player does not necessarily own the horse. Horses are usually owned by landlords and highly rich people wealthy enough to look after it and provide for training facilities for such horses. However, a master shapandaz can choose to select any horse, and the owner of the horse usually wants his horse to be ridden by a master shapandaz, as a winning horse also brings pride to the owner. The game consists of two main forms, tadabarai and Kyrgyzstan. Tadabarai is considered to be the simpler form of the game. In this version, the goal is simply to grab the goat and move in any direction until clear of the other players. In Kyrgyzstan, players must carry the carcass around a flag or marker at one end of the field, then throw it into a scoring circle, the circle of justice, at the other end. The riders will carry a whip to fend off opposing horses and riders. When not in use, e.g. because the rider needs both hands to steer the horse and secure the carcass, the whip is typically carried in the teeth. The calf in a Buzkashi game is normally beheaded and disemboweled and has two limbs cut off. It is then soaked in cold water for 24 hours before play to toughen it. Occasionally sand is packed into the carcass to give it extra weight. Though a goat is used when no calf is available, a calf is less likely to disintegrate during the game. While players may not strap the calf to their bodies or saddles, it is acceptable, and common practice, to wedge the calf under one leg in order to free up the hands. These rules are strictly observed only for contests in Kabul. The ground has a square layout with each side long. Each team consists of 10 riders. Only 5 riders from each team can play in a half. The total duration of each half is 45 minutes. There is only one 15-minute break between the two halves. The game is supervised by a referee. A photograph documents kokbörü players in Kyrgyzstan around 1870. However, Kyrgyzstan's kökbörü rules were first officially defined and regulated in 1949. Starting from 1958, kokbörü began being held in hippodromes. The size of a kökbörü field depends on the number of participants. The Buzkashi season in Tajikistan generally runs from November through April. High temperatures often prevent matches from taking place outside of this period, though isolated games might be found in some cooler mountain areas. In Tajikistan and among the Tajik people of Tashkent in China's Xinjiang region, Buzkashi games are particularly popular in relation to weddings, as the games are sponsored by the father of the bride as part of the festivities. Buzkashi is portrayed in several books, both fiction and non-fiction. It is shown in Steve Barry's book The Venetian Betrayal, and it is briefly mentioned in the Khaled Hosseini book The Kite Runner. Buzkashi was the subject of a book called Horsemen of Afghanistan by French photojournalists Roland and Sabrina Michaud. Gino Strata wrote a book named after the sport, with the spelling Buzkashi, in which he tells about his life as surgeon in Kabul in the days after the 9/11 strikes. P.J. O'Rourke also mentions the game in discussions about Afghanistan and Pakistan in the Foreign Policy section of Parliament of Whores, and Rory Stewart devotes a few sentences to it in the places in between. 2 books have been written about Buzkashi which were later turned into films. The game is the subject of a novel by French novelist Joseph Kessel titled Les Cavaliers, aka Horsemen, which then became the basis of the film The Horseman, 1971. The film was directed by John Frankenheimer with Omar Sharif in the lead role, and U.S. actor and accomplished horseman Jack Palance as his father, a legendary retired shapandaz. This film shows Afghanistan and its people the way they were before the wars that racked the country, particularly their love for the sport of Buzkashi. The game is also a key element in the book Caravans by James Michener and the film of the same name, 1978, starring Anthony Quinn. A scene from the film featuring the King of Afghanistan watching a game included the real-life king at the time, Muhammad Zahir Shah. The whole sequence of the game being witnessed by the king was filmed on the Kabul golf course, where the national championships were played at the time the film was made. In Ken Follett's book, Lie Down with Lions, 1986, the game is mentioned being played, but instead of a goat, they used a live Russian soldier. A number of films also reference the game. Fr. La Passe du Diable, 1956, by Jacques Dupont and Pierre Schoendorfer. The Horseman, 1971, starring Jack Palance and Omar Sharif as father and son, is centered on the game. Both La Passe du Diable and The Horseman are based on scripts written by Joseph Heller, although they are not similar in plot or style. In Rambo 3, 1988, directed by Peter MacDonald, John Rambo, played by Sylvester Stallone, was shown in a sequence playing and scoring at a Buzkashi with his Mujahideen friends when suddenly they were attacked by the Soviets. The Tom Selleck film High Road to China, 1983, features a spirited game of Buzkashi. Buzkashi is described at length in Episode 2, The Harvest of the Seasons, of the documentary The Ascent of Man by Jacob Bronowski. It is put in the context of the development, by the Mongols, of warfare using the horse and its effect on agricultural settlements. The film includes several scenes from a game in Afghanistan. The opening scenes of the Bollywood film Kupkari, 1992, which was filmed in Afghanistan and India, show actors Amitabh Bachchan and Sridevi engaged in the game. The game is mentioned briefly in John Huston's film The Man Who Would Be King, 1975, based on a story by Rudyard Kipling. The movie Dodgeball, A True Underdog Story, 2004, during advertisements for the fictional ESPN 8 show television channel, episode 15 of season 5 of Mrs. Los Angeles, 2015, and the Bollywood movie Kabul Express, 2006. The 2012 joint international Afghan short film Buzkashi Boys depicts a fictional story centered on the game, and has won awards at several international film festivals. On January 10, 2013, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences nominated Buzkashi Boys for an Oscar in the category of short film, live action, for the 85th Academy Awards. Venerated Buzkashi, ulak tartysh in Kyrgyz, player, 82-year-old veteran school teacher Kamid Boranov stars in 2016 featured documentary film Letters from the Pamirs by Janil Jusupjan. Famed Buzkashi players of Jailgan village Shamsuddin and Kazaki appear in a sequence to show the elements of Buzkashi to kids from a town. A spirited Buzkashi match is one of the last episodes of the film made in Jurjtal Kyrgyz region in Tajikistan's north. Buzkashi is mentioned in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, where it is translated as goat hockey and is a clue to the location of Sean O'Connell. Composer Scott Fields recorded a track called Buzkashi on the Clean Feed Records guitar compilation I Never Met a Guitar, 2010. American military personnel became aware of Buzkashi, and eventually the truism, every day is a Buzkashi day, and the semi-rhetorical question, why is every day a Buzkashi day, became part of the jargon of those serving in Afghanistan. The obvious explanation and answer to the question is that every day is a Buzkashi day because every day someone tries to get your goat. Pato, a similar horseback Argentine sport. Horseball, another game played on horseback. Yak racing. Rugby union in Afghanistan. Polo, a similar horseback game played with a ball,